This segment of Delmarva Life is brought to you by Peninsula Regional Medical Center.
Well, we've all been there, feeling overwhelmed by difficult emotions or situations, but most of us get through it.
But what about those who can't? Those who think in that particular moment, dying seems to be the only way out.
What if there was a way to identify those who are at risk for suicide with a simple blood test? Researchers have discovered a genetic mutation common in people who had committed suicide. The mutation was found in the gene SKA2. They also found a chemical change on that gene, and again, it was more common in people who took their own lives. Researchers hope the findings will lead to a blood test that can predict suicide risk, but more testing still needs to be done.
So with the possibilities of this blood test, maybe we wouldn't have to ask ourselves why one would turn to such a final act as a solution. Yeah,
it's a question thousands of families struggle with every day, and for one mom, it's a question that will never be answered.
He was always happy.
It's been 4 years since defensive end Owen Thomas took his own life at his off-campus apartment, but his mother, Kathy Brearley, says she's been forced to live with his painful choice every single day.
He's kind of like frozen in time now as a college student. He'll be that forever for us.
Shortly after his death, a detailed examination of Thomas's brain revealed that he suffered the early stages of CTE, a condition linked to depression and impulse control, especially among full-contact athletes.
There's no reason that he should have it except that he played sports.
But there's new hope for families of college players like Thomas's. The NCAA agreed to settle a class action head injury lawsuit by creating a $70 million fund toward diagnosing athletes with brain traumas. For families like Thomas's, the hope is that the $70 million fund will help diagnose young athletes before it's too late. As part of the settlement, all athletes will take baseline neurological tests to start each year. Coaches and athletes will also take mandated education.
The idea of having a big business that isn't regulated, that isn't held responsible, is not acceptable.
Each affected college athlete can sue for damages individually, but Thomas's mother says she doesn't have the strength to fight in court. She encourages other college athletes' families to get in play. Mrs. Brearley says the more lawsuits, the more attention the issue will get.
And CTE is believed to stem from repeated blows to the head and has been linked to a variety of symptoms such as memory loss and depression.
Well, suicide has certainly been in the spotlight a lot recently after actor Robin Williams took his own life earlier this month. He's been described as a true genius in comedy. The actor's death has really shed light on depression and how it should not be taken lightly.
Yeah, Robin himself spoke of it in the movie World's Greatest Dad. He said, "If you're that depressed, reach out to someone. Suicide is a permanent solution to temporary problems." Of course, Robin Williams is just one of many celebrities who have taken their own life. At the young age of 29, former Disney star Lea Thompson Young committed suicide without leaving a note. Lea died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound last year. In August 2012, director of the hit film Top Gun, Tony Scott, died from his injuries from jumping off an LA bridge. Tony did leave notes to his family and friends, but they didn't reveal why he took his own life. And then there was fashion designer and former model Lwen Scott, who was also the girlfriend of Rolling Stones lead singer Mick Jagger. She killed herself in March. Her assistant found her body.
There was, of course, the ever-popular singer and songwriter Kurt Cobain of Nirvana fame. Cobain struggled with heroin addiction, illness, and depression. He took his own life in 1994.
Such sadness, and we just don't seem to understand why. Why would someone go to those extremes to take their own life? It's a mystery to those of us left behind.
A suicidal person may not ask for our help, but that doesn't mean that the help isn't wanted. Most people who commit suicide don't necessarily want to die, they just want to stop hurting. Suicide prevention all starts with recognizing the warning signs and taking them seriously. Here to help us recognize and tell us more about it is psychologist Michael Finnegan, the director of Peninsula Mental Health Services and member of the Department of Psychology at Peninsula Regional Medical Center. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For coming in this afternoon. So, for those of us that can't really wrap our head around that kind of depression. Can you explain it to us?
Right. Well, depression causes us to have a narrowing of our options. We can't really see the possibilities. And so there's fatalism, hopelessness, helplessness. I can't do anything about this. And that really the only solution is to kill myself. And that's what we try and attack when we find a patient or a loved one that is contemplating suicide, which is fairly common in the United States.
And you mentioned contemplating suicide.
Right. It's the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. It's the 3rd leading cause of death in individuals 15 to 24. Wow. 20% of all kids from 15 to 24, the cause of death is suicide.
And it's not always premeditated, is it?
No, it's not. Oftentimes it is, but it can be an impulsive act. There's many different motivations based oftentimes on the age group, escape, revenge, but much of the time it is a sense of desperation. I want to escape from this pain that I am experiencing.
So as friends and family members, is there something we can do?
Well, first of all, for friends and family members of individuals who have either taken their life, we need to understand that suicide most of the time is a very private thing, that the individual doesn't give off cues. Because the loved ones who are left behind in all of the pain that is caused by suicide believe that they could have done something different, that they should have seen something, had some warning. Well, to be that wonderful wife or that wonderful husband or that wonderful mom, you're not there as the psychologist or the psychiatrist, right? You're there for them as the mom. So you're not looking for these signs and symptoms. Though thoughts of suicide are very common in high school students. The Centers for Disease Control did a study. 16% of high school students have thoughts, serious thoughts of suicide. That's 4 times the rate of the general population.
So those who are left behind shouldn't really take it personally or blame themselves.
Well, obviously it's going to impact them, but the idea that they were wrong, that they were somehow inadequate. If an individual talks about suicide, that's a call for action. That's not a time for reflection. That you engage them in conversation and you call for help. You call 911 and you continue that dialogue. You're not being the cheerleader, but you are trying to remind them of how they have made a difference, how they are important. There's always plenty of time. To convey that, there's always plenty of time in the future. If you're going to kill yourself, that you have the time to do that. You don't have to do that right now.
Let's talk about this.
Right. You want to create that delay factor. If, for example, you come home and you have a loved one that is preparing to take their life.
Right. So are there some things that we can look for, any particular things that might be happening?
Certainly. Well, there are risk factors.
Okay.
I mean, a family history of suicide, a witnessing a suicide or familiarity with an individual who committed suicide, depressed mood, a sense of hopelessness, increased strife. In older individuals, and adult white males have the highest rate of suicide, 75, 85-year-old who has been faced with a major illness, like Robin Williams, faced with a major illness, that is associated with an increased risk. And substance abuse is another huge factor. 33%, the CDC reported that 33% of individuals who successfully committed suicide in the United States, alcohol or illicit substances were found in their blood system.
Yeah, in fact, Robin Williams, there were reports that he was sleeping 20 hours a day before it happened.
Well, there are signs of depression in a major depressive disorder. That's a serious level of depression, which is treatable. It's a cold of the mind. But that you look at symptoms of sleep disturbance, appetite disturbance, reduced feelings of worth, decreased energy, thoughts of death. These are signs of a treatable problem, but we must act. Just the pill that is the Prozac or the Zoloft just popped into your mouth is not adequate care. That medication can be very valuable, but we need to learn skills, develop insights on how to effectively deal with our pain.
Right. So we come into a situation, we see someone is seriously considering taking their life. some people say, wow, you are really being a coward. You are really being selfish.
Selfish, yeah, I've heard that.
Right. That helps to facilitate the sense of shame and guilt. It makes it worse. And I would strongly recommend that you are not saying that. It is a disease. It's part of an illness, a psychiatric illness that needs to be treated. And again, there's one individual in 25 who attempts suicide is successful. But that it is to get treatment. Right. That depression is conquerable. I mean, to have that optimism. When we look at cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the standard of care for the treatment of depression and suicide, is that you are attacking these underdeveloped skills. Optimism is an underdeveloped skill. Self-blame is an overdeveloped skill. Catastrophic thinking, that I'm going to be fired, I'm going to lose my house, I'm going to lose my family. Catastrophic thinking is overdeveloped. Underdeveloped is perseverance. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to teach people skills. Good treatment is acquiring skills of how to deal with these challenges of life.
And when in doubt, if you think someone's thinking about it, 911, and of course we have the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number right there.
And removing dangerous items from the house. The number of males kill themselves through firearms at 59% of the time they'll use firearms. But the other means by which people take their lives in the United States is through poisoning, pills, and suffocation or hanging.
Doctor, thank you
so much.
You're welcome.
So much.
Wow, and if you would like to read more about suicide prevention, go to WBOC.com and click on our picture at the top of the page.
Absolutely eye-opening.
Yes.
Well, with the passing of Robin Williams, it's definitely put him and suicide in the spotlight. Social media has been flooded with stories and videos, everybody reminiscing, but is there somebody trying to take advantage of all that? They are, and we're going to tell you how.
And as we all know, there are many pros and there are cons to the internet, but finding success in personal branding might be easier than you think. We'll show you how, plus how the internet is providing a way to shop that gives you the peace of mind in knowing where your money is going. Delmarva Life, we'll be right back.